All right, let's do this. Once again, for those of you who've just joined, my name is Arjun Bahadur. I lead the Life Skills Collaborative, which is a collaborative that is championing for life skills in India. Currently, we have 18 organizations that are working across 4 different states and are working on multiple different aspects around life skills, one of which happens to be assessments, and we'll focus the discussion today around assessments. You can see our members on the screen. The basic idea with which the Life Skills Collaborative was set up in January 2021 was to transform learning ecosystems to facilitate children and young people to thrive. To put it simply, we are trying to mainstream life skills education in the public education system. And for that, we have 3 or 4 different tracks of work. One of the things that we're trying to do is build a common vocabulary for life skills. I can go on and on about the glossary that we put together. Maybe I'll request one of my colleagues to put a link on the chat for you to explore the glossary, but this is a contextual vocabulary that has been developed especially for India. We've used more than 26 frameworks. We've taken help of the EASL lab at Harvard University. And there are a large number of organizations that have started to align the work that they do in life skills with the definitions of 52 skills that we currently have in the LSC glossary. We'll talk about assessments in a little bit, but we also have 4 state government partnerships. We've partnered with Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, and Mizoram. And our assessment tools, 2 of which you will hear about today, have been developed in partnership with the state governments. We also do some work which we call Voices, which is trying to talk to as many stakeholders from the ground up, and these include young people, parents, teachers, to understand how they think about life skills, to know more about their understanding and aspirations from life skills. The LSC assessments is a set of 4 different assessments that have been created. 2 of them have been created for adolescents, in the age group of 11 to 18. They assess a set of skills called social and emotional well-being. And there is a second tool that measures skills that we call future readiness, also very closely associated with employability skills. The other 2 assessments that we've developed, one is for teachers and the other is for system. We'll hear more about those 2 today. The system assessment, we believe, is probably one of the first of its kind in the world, where we're trying to understand how a system, a large-scale system, say an SCRT in a state, if they want to implement a life skills program across the state, how equipped are they, how ready are they? Similarly, we have an assessment for teachers, which is a self-assessment, which helps teachers understand their readiness to transact these. And we will be sharing the recording of it publicly at a later point. This is just for you to know. The format that will follow is a set of presentations by the team members who are here today, and I will shortly introduce them. And we will leave the questions to the end. So we'll talk about the 3 different tools that we want to talk about today in about 20-minute intervals. That'll leave us about 20 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A button on your screen to post your questions. We will be collating all these questions and we'll try and answer as many as we can before we close the session today. Those of you who are joining us on LinkedIn, please put your questions there. We are monitoring the LinkedIn feed as well. We will be picking up questions from there also. With that, I want to quickly introduce my panelists today, and I will hand it over to them to make this a very interesting session for all of you. So we have Neena Jain. Neena is a core team member of Udyam Learning Foundation's monitoring and evaluation team, where she leads the nascent Mindsets Actions Research project. I found it very interesting and I would love to hear more today. Prior to Udyam, Neena spent 2 years in Bihar as the impact lead for 1 Acre Funds pilot, working with rural smallholder farmers in East Chaparman district. Before she moved to North India, Nina worked at the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, where she also earned her master's in political economy for development at SOAS. Nina, thank you for joining us. We are really looking forward to knowing more about the work that you're doing with the March assessment. I'm also happy to introduce Aditi Vyas. Aditi is an Assistant Director, Gender, Youth and Development at ICRW's Asia office. She brings 13 years of experience in gender, adolescence, and empowerment. Her area of expertise include program design and management, qualitative research, curriculum development, and review and communication. Her current work is focused on the development of teachers and systems assessment tools as part of the LSC program and assessing the impact of COVID-19 policy response on informal women workers in the Delhi NCR region as part of the Rebuild project. So Aditi is also joined by her colleague Rapsima, but I'm going to leave that for Aditi to introduce when we get to there. I just realized some of you are joining us for the first time, so I want to talk a little bit about the LSNet platform that we've created as well. The LSNet, this is the 6th edition of the LSNet, and what we've tried to do is bring together like-minded organizations working in the life skill space, provide a platform for us to meet, to share and learn from each other. LSC has 18 organizations, so we do try and share the work that we are doing, but we also invite other organizations to reach out to us, share with us the work that they're doing, and we also try and showcase some of them in our sessions as we go forward. This is LSNet as a platform is not limited for assessments. It is any kind of work that you might be doing with life skills. Do reach out to us, let us know the work that you're doing, and in the next edition, we will try and see if we can invite some of you to also present. We meet every quarter, so the LSNet platform meets 4 times a year. It's an online platform. We'll be happy to answer any more questions that you have on the LSNet. And please do write to us. We will share an email address towards the end. With that, I am now going to excuse myself and I'm going to invite Nina to talk about the March project that they've been working on. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I just want to check everyone can see the screen and hear me.
Yes,
okay?
Nina, we can.
Thank you. Perfect. Thanks, Arjun. Thank you, everyone. This is really overwhelming to see such a great turnout on a Friday afternoon of all days. So thank you for coming. A big thanks to the LSC and Arjun, and very honored to share this space also with Aditi and Rapsimar from ICRW. So I'll dive right into it since we have about 15-20 minutes here. So I'm Nina, of course, from Udyam Learning Foundation, and I'm a part of the monitoring and evaluation team. This project, the Mindsets Actions Research Project, or March for short, which is always fun to talk about in the month of March, can get a little confusing, but here we are. This project is actually, as Arjun mentioned, quite nascent within the organization, and we have a small team within the larger ME team. And I just wanted to, right off the bat, kind of just share that this is experimental. We are exploring. None of us are really, true experts in this field, but we have just found a gap or a need out there in terms of life skills assessment, and we are exploring solutions that are innovative and creative, and this is what we're looking to share with you today. Having said that, we're also very open to feedback, to debate, to guidance, to technical expertise. So just wanted to start with that before diving into the content. Okay, so before we dive in, you might be asking why mindsets and why actions. And I think just for a lot of us here, there's some challenges in this space that are quite relatable in terms of the measurement of life skills and working with youth and trying to measure or understand change that is so intangible in many ways. So, why are we here now, and why are we talking about this in particular. And so far, what we've seen is that, psychometrics have been used, psychometric scales, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, for this kind of assessment, but they've had their limitations coming from a Western context and being developed in Western context. And we felt the need to move beyond, and to not only move beyond what is being measured in those places, but to do it, where it's contextually relevant. And so when we talk about mindsets here, this really comes from Udyam's work around the entrepreneurial mindset curriculum and the kind of work that we do with government schools across the country. So when we're talking about mindsets here, we're talking about a set of beliefs, a set of attitudes. That's generally how they're referred to, that drive certain behaviors, certain actions. And you can have certain skills or life skills, but they may not be put into use depending on whether you actually have a certain mindset or not. So it depends on the mindset, whether you might have the skill or the life skill, but putting it into action is dependent on the mindset. And so at Udyam, we thought, we've used psychometrics, but we're not fully convinced, especially because of the practical applications of what those psychometric scales are telling us. And so we thought, can we look at someone's actions, which is something observable, something that they're doing, and possibly something that is objectively observable, and connect that to a particular mindset or to mindsets. So the hypothesis is really, are we able to look at someone's actions and from that talk about what kind of mindset they may have? And is it possible to, by understanding how much they do a certain action, repeated behavior, repeated patterns of behavior, understand the strength of a mindset as well? So this is where we started out. And what you're about to see is kind of our first attempt at, how can we even go about this? And on the larger scale, March is looking to measure doing. But if we look even further out, what we're trying to bring about is something of an asr for youth that is simple, socially relatable, socially accepted, and a simple measurement of youth actions. That is a long way down the line, but that's the larger vision here. So I'll just move ahead. And something to just, just before I move ahead, something to just think about as we go through these next few slides is to reflect upon, have you ever seen a young person doing something that made you think, okay, further on in life, they're going to actually thrive or be successful. And what was it that they were doing that made you feel that way? This is just something I'll leave you with to think about as we go through the next few slides. So I'll start with design to share a little bit about, and I hope you can fully see my slides here. I'll just hide this. I'll start with design and then walk you through how we operationalized what we have right now and some of the data that's coming out of that. I'd also like to talk about some of the learnings we've had along the way, because we have found those extremely useful. I hope that they are useful for those of you who are here today as well. So to start with design, we had this big hypothesis, we had these questions, and we thought, well, now what do we do with this? And so the first place we sort of started was to articulate some non-negotiables. We knew we wanted to be actions-based. We wanted to be about real-world actions that are important to common people or to the world and are socially relevant. We knew that we wanted to work towards objectivity and to be open source. So those are some of the non-negotiables we set out, almost right from the beginning. Some guiding principles that emerged as well in terms of tool development, in terms of what we were designing, is to be youth-centric, to be simple, to be relatable, to have possibly an element of joy, and to be inclusive and responsible in what we were developing. So to start out, we of course started talking to people. We did some primary research. We started with actually the idea of what does entrepreneurial action look like, and what do entrepreneurs do, and what did they do when they were younger. So we started small around us in the vicinity, and then started to expand, who we were talking to, started talking to youth at alternative education institutions. The picture at the top is actually in Rajasthan at Grameen Shiksha Kendra, which is based in Savai Madhopur. And we also realized that we should be talking to some of the country's largest employers. So the bottom picture is actually from a railway station here in Bangalore. And we were trying to get time with the station master, who's very, very, very busy. But we tried to explore, what does this kind of entrepreneurial action look like in different places, and what do different people have to say about it. So once we gathered all of these perspectives, also some secondary research, of course, we decided to shortlist all of our actions that we had gathered. So we ended up with a long list of actions, shortlisted based on how much it was coming up, what was actually coming up as most important. And we took this moment in time to start mapping these actions to Udyam's curriculum and to our mindsets, the mindsets that Udyam uses at the moment, which are grit, trying new things, independent decision-making, and self-awareness. And we decided to do this mapping so we could figure out where to go from there. Now, some of these actions do map to certain competencies within these mindsets. There were some, for example, however, that are just important life skills for young people to thrive. So we kept those in as well because we thought those were important. From this point on, we looked at the landscape of what kinds of measurement methods are available out there. And we realized we don't know enough yet about what actions young people are taking and their context. And so we thought, let's do a self-reported questionnaire to first understand what are they doing, what are they not doing, and why. And this led us to the first tool, which is what we call an activity questionnaire, which is the name we use, the student-facing name that we use. And it is a 10-item and a 20-item questionnaire that we developed based on the actions that we collected. So I'll just move to show you some sample questions or questionnaire items from this questionnaire. So the idea again was to focus on an action. And as you can see here, we had 4 response options because we're trying to understand, and this is a learning we actually had from prototyping. We're trying to actually understand, if they are doing something, how often are they doing it? And if not, this piece was really important for us, then why are they not doing it? And we didn't want to assume that, if something is not being done, it's because of a mindset. There's much more to it. And so we wanted to understand their context behind, doing something or not doing something. What are some of the barriers? So this has been particularly interesting to see in the data around, not needing to do something, perhaps not wanting to do something, wanting to, but not having the opportunity, which we see as a clear area of demand coming from our learners, and not being allowed, so permission not being given. So 2 of the questions that I've shared here just as samples are the first one around help seeking, and the second one around mobility and traveling alone. Now, these questions, sometimes we do tweak them depending on the age group, depending on the context, depending on, when we're asking it, but just wanted to share a few of the questions here with you to give you a sense of what, we've been working on. So some of just the learnings I wanted to touch upon here are, we initially, when we were talking about objectivity, we thought, how do we know what young people are doing? And something we realized is it's okay to start with self-reported. We see this as a stepping stone to understanding and gathering more data before we move on to perhaps the next iteration, however that might look. Prototyping was essential. Every time you translate, every time you go to a new context, it was very important to talk to young people on the ground, ensure that the questions are being understood in the way that you want them to. We also, for some questions, we learned that certain words like leadership or project, don't have the same kind of meaning for young people or need to be explained in a different way. So those were some great learnings that came about. And just in terms of the tool itself, what you see now is the first version. We will be developing a second iteration, but some of the things we've already learned is, should the questions be questions? Can they be statements instead? Should the options, be less skewed because we've got 3 yeses, 1 no. So what should that scale look like? Can we reduce the cognitive load of some of these questions if you have multiple actions being combined in one? How can you simplify that for the respondents? So those have been some great learnings that we've had along the way. Now, so as mentioned, this questionnaire is something we started as a 10 item and then a 20 item. And we've been able to operationalize this at significant scale, I would say, within Udyam. And that has really been because of Udyam's reach and access and resources. Udyam works in about 8 to 9 states at scale in collaboration with governments. And so the existing machinery of, operations teams, our M&E team, and the tools that our M&E team already deploys around a baseline and an end line, we were able to leverage all of that. And so we used that machinery to get this questionnaire out to students. We used a digital platform called Alchemer, a form building platform. And we're able to get this link out to students in 5 different states. So at the moment, this is in Delhi, Uttarakhand, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and one more place, Punjab, yes, in Punjab. So the technology has been actually able to give us that scale, but also just our existing relationships, partnerships on the ground, and the people that we have on the ground. In terms of the sample, we have, because of the scale actually that we're working with, we designed a sample in each of these places to ensure that we're getting something representative, that we're taking different factors into account. And what we chose to do, similar to what our M&E efforts were already doing, was to run this as a baseline and an end line, or in some cases, like in Delhi, we've got actually a Delhi baseline, midline, and possibly an end line as well. So that has been the sort of process of operationalization. And in places where technology or mobile access is not as great, so the pictures here are actually from Uttarakhand. We did want to keep inclusivity in mind and reach. And so we were lucky in Uttarakhand to have observers or data collectors who have a set of sample schools that they visit. And we were able to equip them with devices which were then, as you can see here, given to the students to fill out the form. So there's an aspect of just novelty and, for the kids being able to use technology. I just wanted to also, important but briefly mention here, reliability and validity. So we have, this is an area of growth for us, an area of learning for us, but we have started to do reliability and validity tests throughout this process. And I have to really thank the LSC and Dream a Dream for helping us understand, these tests and how to deploy them, what they mean, how to use the data from them. But this is a critical part of our tool development process because of where we want to take this and the credibility that you would want to attach to a new tool. So that is ongoing as well. So I mentioned we were able to, run this in about 5 states. And so I wanted to share some of the, just the data that we are seeing from, the places that we've run it. So I've chosen to share some data here from Delhi, which is running a business blasters program, which is a business project in actually the 11th and 12th standard schools of Delhi. But this particular questionnaire was run with 11 standard students and 270 schools across all 15 districts of Delhi. We were able to reach, again, thanks to our existing relationships. So in total here, we have about 60,000 responses from baseline plus midline. And just to give you a sense of, a little bit of the demographics, we collected a lot more around demographics, and that is an important piece, I would say, of the data collection. But another important piece is sex disaggregated data. So we had about 60.5% female respondents, 39.4% male, and 0.1% other. And the difference between this baseline and midline was about 6 months. So just choosing one question here to focus on. We're actually just in the process of doing this analysis, and especially the shift analysis, or the, from one pre to post. So in this case, baseline to midline. So it's been just a lot of learning and some encouraging results that we are seeing. Now, I will have to say that a lot of this needs to be validated, and we need to make sense of what we're seeing here, because there are no benchmarks for this data. But the question that I've chosen to just highlight here is extracurricular leadership, or being a leader in an activity outside of just the classroom. So at baseline for this question, we saw 62% of females reporting that they have been a leader outside of studies. 69% of males reported the same. And if you remember the if, no, and the 4 options, the option that was wanted to but didn't have an opportunity, that was chosen by 16% of, or 16% of respondents chose that option. And so when we look at midline, these numbers, as you can see, have increased. And we now have 73% of females saying that they've been a leader outside of studies, 77% of males. And the wanted to but didn't have an opportunity response fell by 5%. So the kind of change we're seeing here, of course, is that both males and females are reporting doing more of this action from baseline to midline. And the gender gap in this situation has actually narrowed. So again, early results. We are working on this analysis at the moment for the other programs as well, and are trying to make sense of what we're seeing. An important thing to point out here is that we do need to validate these findings. We have observation data from classrooms, we have people on the ground, so we do need to do some of that validation, as well as focus group discussions, which we are planning to do soon. There's also more possible in terms of disaggregation of the data by district, types of schools. And I think just an important point here, with Aditi also being on this panel, the gender piece is something we would love to do more on as well. What is the baseline that we're considering when you're talking about gender? For example, should females be moving up from where they are, or should they be catching up to males? These are all questions that we're also trying to tackle, and there's just so much more to learn here. So this is just an example of the quantitative findings that we are seeing. I also wanted to share some qualitative responses that we've been seeing. Now, we decided to collect qualitative data at endline to start to understand what kinds of actions are young people actually thinking about when they answer these questions. So when they say yes, whether it's many times or sometimes or once or twice, what's coming to their minds. And so we decided to ask in Uttarakhand at the end line, and this is what I've shared here, to start building up sort of a bank of actions of what young people are thinking about when they see these questions. And we actually, just on a design note, did not do this for every single student. So this was randomized, but that design allowed us to get examples for each question, but every child did not have to give an example for every question. So it still gave us a healthy, kind of amount of qualitative data, which is something also to be mindful about in terms of, how much can you also actually analyze, because qualitative, generally the challenge is that it takes much longer. And when you have multiple languages, that's some additional time to add to the process. But what I've shared here is a question around initiating difficult discussions, rather, especially with figures of authority and about things that are important to the young person. So I just love to, if everyone could take a little time to just read through some of the examples shared here. And the one on the right is about helping others in the community. So here we actually did provide some examples, but this is definitely a question I would love to rework in the version 2. But as you can see, there's a range of responses in terms of what young people are thinking about when they see these questions, and range in terms of, I think, complexity, depth. The one that has really stood out for me on the left side is a 9th standard student talking about how he had a discussion with his father about his drinking. So you're seeing quite a range, and this is going to help us in the future, again, with the iteration of the questionnaire. So just moving ahead now. So that gave you a really brief overview of, how we designed the questionnaire, which is really just the first tool within this whole March project, and how we operationalized it. In big thanks to Udyam's systems that are currently in place. And
sorry to interrupt your flow.
Oh, sure.
But
Yeah.
if you could just conclude in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah. So we're and now we're thinking about how to move forward and the next step. So a V2 iteration that is based on all the feedback that we've gotten, FGDs, as I've mentioned, and also trying to figure out the scoring and the scale that is used, and is an index possible, or what can we actually say about mindsets. So that, and actually just one additional point here is the applicability of this to contexts that are outside of education, for example, HR or even educational institutes using it as a part of their kind of holistic assessment processes. So that is something we're thinking about for the way ahead. I just wanted to end with some inspiration. We happened to, in Delhi, add a little free text area at the end of the questionnaire to ask, if there's anything else on your mind, feel free to share. And these are some of the comments that came up, completely voluntary, along with a lot of other comments. But to us, this is the kind of, responses or the kind of things that young people share that are really inspirational. And we hope that this inspires you too. And I think it just, for us, also created a sense of responsibility, being designers of these experiences and designers of these assessments, the kind of impact you can really have even through just a questionnaire and the reflection that is triggered. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nina. Thank you. And sorry, I had to rush a little bit. I just want to make sure we get the other presentations in as well. But this is really interesting. And I know we've spoken earlier a fair bit about it. So I think this is a very innovative, creative way of trying to get students to answer questions around leadership. So I think it's pretty exciting. And also, I think one of the things that you brought out is, for me, what's really, really exciting is the kind of work that we're now doing in India, which is being developed in India for the Indian context, for the global South context, I think is really inspiring. And I think keeping that in mind, I'm also going to invite my colleagues from the LSE, Aditi and Rapsima, to talk about a lot of the contextual global South focused work that they've been doing in developing tools for teacher and system assessments. Aditi, I'm going to hand it to you and let you take it forward from here, please. Thank you. For those of you who have questions, and I see there's one question already on what Nina told us, please put it on the Q&A tab or on the chat, and we'll pick it up and get back to you at the end for sure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to check, am I audible?
There's a slight lag in your audio, Aditi, but we could hear that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Arjun. Apologies, I dropped out for a second there. I'm joined by my colleague Rapsimar, who's also been an integral part of this entire journey of developing these tools. Rapsimar, I'm unable to see the screen at the moment. Is it being shared already?
Yes, the screen is being shared. Let me try to share it again if it's not visible yet.
No, it's visible, Rapsima.
Okay.
We can see the screen.
Okay, so let's just give it a minute. I think
Right.
there might be a lag at my end. We are going to start today. I'm able to see the screen yet, so apologies if what I'm saying doesn't really match up with what is coming up. But we have two sets of presentations for you today. One is talking about the development of teacher assessment for life skills education and assessing their preparedness to do the same. And the second set of presentation will just look at how the system assess their own preparedness to take up life skills education. So far, am I audible? Just checking in.
Yes, Aditi. Are you able to see the screen yet?
Not yet.
There is a little bit of lag in the audio as well. If maybe you want to try after switching off the video, because the video is also not yet visible. Maybe it might just be better. Apologies for the technical glitch, everyone.
Yeah, apologies. Okay. Now can you see me and am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Let's begin. So apologies, you know how sometimes these things are out of our control. I have two different connections and yet we are experiencing this kind of a challenge. So we will start with the teacher's assessment tool. When we talk about life skills education, the idea and the vision for the collaborative is to really elevate the status of life skills in the country. And that really means working with all players in the system, working with all key stakeholders who can really contribute to that journey of ensuring the child or the student is developing holistic skills as part of the development in the school period. So if we can go to the first slide. And here, when we start, I would just like the audience to think for 2 minutes about, when you were in school, who were the teachers you remember fondly? Who were the teachers whose classes you and who were the teachers who would always want you to sort of think a little bit more about the class that you attended or want to do the homework in some cases. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because when we talk about teachers imparting education, they are not just teachers who are looking at the curriculum and just imparting it in the classroom. They are looked at as role models, educators, and facilitators. Many of us decide to do something later on in life because there was one teacher who inspired us to do so. And when we talk about teachers as educators, role models, and facilitators, it becomes extremely critical and crucial for them to have these skills to be able to effectively transact life skills education, because life skills, as you know, is not rote learning. It is much more experiential. There is a kind of participatory reflection built into it. So in order to assess where the teachers are at the moment, whether it is in the state education system or it is in a program that you might be looking to assess, we want to develop a tool that can actually analyze and interpret and look at what is the current status of teachers' knowledge and perspective around life skills education. Do they think life skills are important? they be included as part of student learning? What is their instructional
Aditi, we're not able to hear you.
Yeah,
and
I
think
think
she's
Aditi,
probably dropped out.
Aditi may have dropped
Um,
out a little bit.
back? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, maybe you could keep the video
Okay.
switched off, Aditi.
Yeah, I
and,
think so.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Great. So we are on the first slide. Hello.
Yes, Aditi.
I'm not able to see the slide, but I'll just continue where I was. So
Yes.
the idea is to really be able to understand in terms of instructional preparedness and pedagogy, what kind of tools or trainings have they currently been through, and what kind of preparedness do they possess at the and when we talk about required resources and support, what is it that they currently have at the moment, and where do they need support going forward? So these are some of the outcomes that we are planning to assess as part of the teachers assessment tool, and we hope that the tool can add value to government in terms of able to assess where teachers are in their journey to prepare to be able to transact effective delivery of life skills in the state, and also identify areas where they need to where they require more support, where the training need to be planned, and the things in mind where we started developing the tool. If we move to the next slide. Right. So in terms of the objectives of the tool, like I said, the teacher assessment tool plans to assess teachers' preparedness and readiness to deliver lesson in the classroom. It also enables
Aditi, I think we've lost the audio.
I am back. Can you guys
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Sincere apologies for this. This is really, really sad. So if I can sort of pick up from where I left off. So it also will help the state governments to plan and organize capacity building initiatives for teachers based on the identified gaps and needs from the data. So in terms of just talking about why is this tool relevant, why is it important, what are the features of the tool? So it has developed a standardized quantitative structured question. However, the difference or the uniqueness of this tool is the fact that it can be self-administered. While the development of the tool has been a very collaborative process where we really sought insights and inputs from the government officials, from the government experts, so that we know that the tool is really sort of built with ground up knowledge as to what really needs to be put inside, what kind of area of inquiry should we really think about. And therefore, during this process, we realized that the government or the state education systems are quite well versed with online platforms like Google Forms. So since it's an online form, the time required and the processes to usually hire enumerators to conduct a survey really cancels out, and that therefore the tool is self-administered and can be easily scaled because it's a link that can be shared through the departments, through the districts, through block officers at the various levels to the teachers, and they can fill it out at their own level. I'm so sorry.
Yes, you're with us, Aditi.
Okay, great. Therefore, the tool also logically track what the teachers are. So while, so for example, when it comes to the state governments, they can periodically track at the moment, currently given what kind of program going on in the state. With that situation, have teachers what is their perspective and preparedness trans life skills. And if the state then scales up life skills education and decides to do another survey at the end of 2 years or a 3-year period, they can measure the progress in terms of what were the needs of teachers and in levels of preparedness and capacity building prior and now. So it can also be used as a tool to measure baseline and endline with a specific cohort or a group, depending on the context of the program or whether it is being used by the state governments. Can we move to the next slide? Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
Apologies,
Aditi.
I
Are
am
you
not
able-
able to. Oh, yeah, there. Yeah,
Oh, great.
great. So just very briefly, we want to share with you the tool development process, simply because we really do think that the design and the methodology for developing this tool had been thought through very intentionally to ensure that we had the buy-in and the inputs and insights from the key stakeholders that will be using these tools, which is the state government and the teachers themselves. So as we start with any research study, we conducted an extensive literature review to identify key areas of, have we skipped a slide? Sorry, yeah. To identify key areas of inquiry. What are different thematic areas around which we should be asking questions to really assess teachers' preparedness for transacting life skills education. We then formulated a section-wise outline and developed a first draft, including the available assessment scales and tools that were in the public domain. And I must give a shout out to TTF, the Teacher Foundation, because that was very useful. Some of their work is what we also have adapted. We held a content validation workshop with government experts. This was very, very useful because in every state, they have to see whether we were on the right path of the tool development, but also receive inputs in terms of contextualizing the tool. So, in terms of response options, for example, in Mizoram, in terms of the different designations within the school, there is also a designation of a health inspector, which gets added in the Mizoram context. So therefore, these workshops really brought the process to the fore, where we could take direct inputs from government experts in terms of language, in terms of the content, the responses that were put in for every question. And if I haven't mentioned it before, we have developed this tool in 3 languages, in Hindi, Marathi, and Mizo. And for the 4 states of Maharashtra, Mizo, Rajasthan, and Uttarakhand. Post the government validation workshop with government experts and validation, we conducted a 2-district validation and contextualization study with the government school teachers. Now, this was very, very important and critical, because not only did we want to see how the tool is working on the ground, whether the teachers find the content to be relevant, are the questions that we are asking contextual, is there anything we are missing out on, how long it is taking for the teachers to fill out the tool, the language appropriate. So this validation contextualization study really helped us sort of identify those gaps and further refine the tool. And as part of the study, also had focus group discussions where we really sort of heard from them on their experiences of filling out the tool. And it was very heartening to see, while some of them felt that it takes a very long time to fill out the tool if you don't skip any sections, they did feel that the tool was very comprehensive and really captured all possible areas of consideration when you talk about life skills education. So post this contextualization and validation study, we incorporated the inputs that we received, and then we conducted a 5-district pilot study in each of the 4 states. Here, what we did was we sort of sampled about 50 teachers from each district, so about 250 to sort of the tool and see whether the tool is working statistically, whether it is working, whether the scales are working, and what kind of analysis then can be done depending on the data that is coming in. Based on the pilot study, we finalize the tool after incorporating our feedback from the findings. So this was the Am I audible?
Yes, now you are.
Okay, great. So just before we get into what kind of analysis can the tool enable us to do, the tool has 5 sections, where the first section is just the background information, which looks at, who are these teachers, which classes do they teach, which subjects do they teach, what is the number of years of experience they bring to the table, etc. Then we get into the thematic areas of different levels at which teachers' preparedness can be assessed. So first section that we look at is the relevance and implementation. Here we try and assess teachers' understanding and relevance of life skills education. Do they think life skills education is relevant for students in relation awareness about life skills programs that have been implemented in their state? Section on teachers' perception of life skills education, where try and assess what are the skills that teachers think that should be prioritized. What should be the mode of implementation of life skills education? Should it be a standalone curriculum? Should it be integrated within subjects or co-curricular activities? Should students be then move into the section on capacity building and support, which requires that need to really immerse education. Concluding with the section on enabling environment and school climate. In our literature review, there was a lot of advocacy for the fact that, for life skills education to really be implemented effectively in the school, all stakeholders and all facets of it should be working together to provide an enabling environment to the child, which means that the system really needs to be involved through the schools. So does the school really provide a positive climate and enabling environment for transaction of life skills? And what is the role that the community engagement can play within this process? So apologies for the fact that I've been dropping out all the time, but these essentially were the thematic areas when we talk about the tool and teachers assessment tool. In terms of the recommended analyses, depending on the kind of data that is coming in, are we on that screen, on that slide, Rapsimar? Because I can't still see the screen.
Yes,
okay, great. So as anybody would know who's ever implemented a statistical tool, you can run a descriptive statistical analysis looking at the response categories for all indicators, a bivariate analysis, which can look at 2 types of responses and club options, and depending on the fact whether there's a large scale assessment or multivariate analysis, where composite indices can be constructed as dependent variables such as knowledge on life skills education, attitude towards life skills education, etc. So for example, if your data throws up an insight about that certain number of percentage of teachers want life skills education to be implemented in a standalone manner. Who are these teachers? Are they the ones who are also currently implementing program? They have, what kind of trainings have they received? What is their experience in the sector, etc. So this is just very briefly in terms of the type of analysis that the tool can enable us to do. And based on this, we want to delve a little bit deeper into the kind of analysis from sections, what kind of use cases we expect. This, I'm going to invite my colleague Rapsimar to present.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aditi. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been finding some of these insights meaningful to your context so far. So like Aditi said, I will just share a few examples and snapshots of what kind of insights the tool can elicit through the analyses like Aditi was talking about for various areas of inquiries in each of these sections. So beginning with the first section, background information. Here, the tool will essentially collect basic demographic information on the sample, and it will also help us understand how essentially representative is the sample that has, filled the form. So information on age, sex, type of school that teachers teach at, the number of years of experience they have, their qualifications, all of subjects and classes taught. Some of these basic information will be collected, and it will also sort of, help us do the bivariate and multivariate analysis at a later stage using some of these background characteristics that have been collected. On the screen, you can also see an example of the tool. So it will give you a sense of how the tool looks like. There's a mix of single choice and multiple choice questions, open-ended questions. So here it's just a few examples of some of the questions from the first section. Moving on to the second section, which is life skills education, relevance and implementation. Here, essentially, insights on how important do teachers consider life skills education? What is their understanding of life skills education? How do they define it? How do they understand it in relation to other similar forms of education, for example, vocational, moral science, value education? Because in a lot of our validation and pilot exercises, we found that some of these terms were being used interchangeably. So to understand, to basically gauge how teachers understand life skills education, it became important to understand how they are referring to it in relation to some of these other forms of education. Then there are questions related to the importance, like I said, and then we also delve deeper into if teachers consider life skills education important, what are some of the reasons that they consider life skills education important? Here, an interesting point to note would be that initially this question was an open-ended question during our validation exercises, and we just collected the different kinds of responses that teachers were giving to why life skills education is important for them. And after collating all of those responses is when we made it a multiple choice question in the second stage, in the pilot stage, and now is there in the refined form of the tool. This section also then has specific questions on how aware teachers are with respect to specific programs and activities running in their school, in their districts, and in their states with respect to life skills education. Are they aware of the life skills that are included, the mode of implementation, or aware of the assessments that are being conducted, trainings that are being held with respect to those programs? So essentially just gives a holistic picture on how aware teachers are and what their understanding is with respect to life skills education and its importance for adolescents. There is also a scale on teachers' perception of planning and conducting life skills education in classrooms. So it's a 3-point scale where there are a mix of positive and negative statements. For example, one of the statements is, I make my lesson plan in accordance to finishing the syllabus as soon as possible. So teachers, I have to choose one of those 3 options. And it gives us an understanding of what is teachers' perception with respect to transacting life skills education in classrooms. Moving on to the third section, which delves deeper into teachers' perception and helps us understand for various aspects of life skills education, what is teachers' perception? How do they think it should be implemented as a standalone subject or integrated in co-curricular activities or in sports? Which life skills do they think are most important or should not be included or are different for boys and girls? Do they think that students should be assessed? For example, in the screenshot shared as part of as you can see on screen, specific questions on what kind of assessments they would like to see in life skills education have been asked. This will essentially share a more nuanced picture of where teachers are at with respect to life skills education. And it then paves way for identifying particular gaps in their knowledge or awareness and perception. And then capacity building initiatives can accordingly be targeted to address some of these gaps. Speaking of which, the next section is capacity building and support. Here, insights related to the trainings that they are already part of. What kind of trainings do they receive with respect to life skills education? What is their particular need? How many trainings would they like to receive? What kind of resources with respect to curriculum, TLM, infrastructure do they already have and would like to need support in? And finally, an enabling environment and school climate, where we have questions related to teachers' perception on what a positive school climate looks like, and what is their perception on an enabling environment with respect to life skills education. And we also have a few questions on community engagement, where we try to gauge what kind of activities do teachers consider important with respect to community engagement. And finally, to wrap up, I would again like to invite Aditi, who can share some of the recommendations that we found out as learnings for implementing the study.
Thanks, Robert. We've got to know so very quickly. The recommendations really implementing the rules of in the state or for another particular cohort that you're working with, just in terms of ensure that sampling becomes extremely critical, because we do want to see that all kinds of teachers are represented when they are taking the teacher's assessment. So in terms of
Aditi, we're not able to hear you anymore.
I think she has dropped out. I'll just
maybe do you want to conclude in a minute, Rapsima, and then we'll also time to move on to the next tool.
Yes, absolutely. I'll do that. So essentially what Aditi was trying to communicate is that sampling becomes very critical because we want to ensure that the sample is representative. If the state governments want, if the state government wants to sort of, essentially assess the preparedness levels across the state and want to implement programs accordingly with respect to the outcomes of the study. So sampling then becomes very critical and must be statistically calculated for the same, and some of the characteristics are given here. With respect to conducting the study, these have emerged out of our own learnings with respect to conducting the pilot study across these 4 states. There should be follow-up mechanisms beforehand, because it can happen that we may want to sort of conduct the study in a span of 10 days or 1 month, but given the fact that teachers are spread across and have a lot on their plate, it becomes important to have follow-up mechanisms to ensure that the entire sample is being achieved. Sufficient time should be designated for teachers to fill up the tool. While they can fill it at their own pace and the flexibility is accorded because of Google Form, there should still be sufficient time. Google Form also ensures anonymity, privacy, and confidentiality, which should also be ensured as part of conducting the study. And finally, the data that is incoming, there should be mechanisms in place for the implementators to periodically track the data so that there are no gross inconsistencies. For example, in one of our studies, we found out that some of the teachers who are not part of the sample have actually filled the form. But we were able to catch that right in time because we were monitoring the data as it was coming. So some of these recommendations are there for implementation of this study. Is there anything that Aditi would like to add before we switch to the next tool? And once again, our sincere apologies for the technical glitches.
Super. Well, I think let's do this. Let's wait because I know I want to leave enough time at the end, Rapsima, for Q&A as well.
Yes.
We've got a few questions on the Q&A tab.
Absolutely.
But this has been, thank you for sharing. The teacher tool has been pretty exciting for us at LSE. More than 1,000 teachers have piloted this tool across 18 districts across the 4 states. So it's been a really robust methodology for validated by the pilot that we did. And we found it easy to use. We found teachers responding to it. And we also got the government to kind of agree on this after they'd seen the tool. So the tool is also currently available in 4 languages that can be used. So thank you for sharing the details about that. I'm going to quickly invite you to move over to the last tool that we want to talk about today. And I'm going to request if we can maybe try and cover it in about 15 odd minutes to still leave about 10 minutes at the end to address some of the questions that have come up.
Sure.
So again, back to you, Aditi and Rapsama, to take this forward. And once again, folks, apologies for the technical glitches. That's not something that we can control. But hopefully the internet will hold for you, Aditi, now. Go for it.
Yes, I really do hope so. And apologies for asking, am I visible, all of that. Thank you so much. Now to the assessment tool. And
Aditi, there is a bit of a disturbance. Maybe if you could, because the video is not visible, maybe if you could switch off the video, I think it might be better.
Hi. On the first slide?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Okay, great. And am I visible? Should I just switch off my audio if that would work better?
I think, yeah,
Video.
not visible. Maybe you should switch off the video, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So just in terms of why systems assessment? I'm audible, right? Sorry, guys, I'm just quickly checking again and again because there's just a lot of, today has not been my day when it comes to the presentation. Right. So in terms of the systems assessment tool, like very kindly Arjun mentioned, that this is the first one of its kind tool that we have been able to develop, and we are really truly very proud of this work, simply because when we think and set out to achieve this gargantuan task of elevating the status of life skills education in the country, all literature, any research that we have done in terms of trying to find available resources, frameworks, they all talk about the significant importance and criticality of engaging the system to have a systemic approach to life skills education implementation, which essentially means that the system, the education system, the education system is the one that has the ownership, and it also has the capacity to scale. So if our vision long term is to really ensure that all children in school from grade 6 to 12 have access to quality life skills education, then for it to really be a reality, it is the system, the education system, that has to take it forward. We could do multiple interventions, multiple programs in different pockets, in different schools, in different blocks and cities, but really for it to penetrate to the very bottom and really reach the last child, it has to be the system that has to take it up. But then how does one really assess how prepared is the system to take on this gargantuan task? Is the system really, is there an appetite to start with? What comprises the system, the education system, in terms of the state departments, the district bodies, the block bodies, the teachers themselves? Do they consider this to be something which is relevant and important? So therefore, we really thought that it is very important to develop a tool that can assess systems' own preparedness, education systems' own ability and preparedness to want to take up life skills education, to see where they are currently and where would they want to go forward in terms of building and strengthening certain mechanisms and systems within the education state system. This is, again, this need for systems assessment, sorry, just one more thing, was also something that has been emphasized time and again in the National Education Policy 2020. When we started out on this journey, we unfortunately did not find a blueprint for it. We did not find any ready tool that could have been just taken and adapted and contextualized. So we really set out to do this task from scratch, so to speak. And like Arjun mentioned, this is a pioneering effort on the part of the collaborative, and we have been very fortunate to be part of this journey. So now quickly starting and getting into it, and I really hope my audio holds. So when we talk about the education system, what do we mean? We mean all departments, bodies, officials that form the part of state education system, which means at the top level, which is the Directorate of Educate, Department of Education, SCRT, CMATs, SAMSA, district level bodies, officers at the district level, block level, and officials at the school level, because the smallest unit of where actually all the action is happening is really the school. So therefore, it is equally important to have the buy-in and the understanding in terms of preparedness of teachers, and also how do SMCs or the SDMCs, people who are members of these committees, view the entire process. So like I mentioned, the outcomes we wanted to assess as part of the tool were really looking at what is the system's appetite for life skills education. Are there policy provisions that they are currently already thinking through to operationalize? Are there some that have been already started that operationalizing? What is the willingness of the system to take on this life skills education scale up? What do they think life skills education is relevant or important? What is their perception about it? And in terms of the preparedness, when it comes to structural and systems, are there allocations within the education budget for implementation of life skills education? And what are the other structural mechanisms in terms of platforms available for interdepartmental coordination into decision making to be able to ensure that the entire process of life skills delivery is going smoothly? So this tool is a self-assessment tool for this education system, and we hope that in terms of adding value to the government, it will help them assess their own readiness and preparedness to take up life skills at scale, implement them in scale in all schools in the state, and also identify in the process areas and specific thematic areas where they need to do more work in terms of strengthening processes or mechanism, or creating more awareness, or putting in the processes and mechanism in terms of policies. Shall we move to the next slide? Yeah, thank you, Rabsimar. Quickly, in terms of the tool design objective, we've already gone through several times. So the self-assessment tool has been developed as a scorecard. Another reason for this as to why is it self-assessment, I want to just talk about it for 2 minutes. We always think of the education system as the one that is actually able to do things at scale, which is true. And for that to happen, any other organization, research organization, collaborative cannot just come from outside and say, this is what you need to assess, or these are the parameters you're faring well at, and these are the parameters you need to work furthermore at. Therefore, we felt that the entire tool must be developed in a participatory manner. It has to be a tool that the state governments can use for themselves to assess their own levels, because nobody will from outside needs to come and assess how well the education system is doing. They are the people who are best placed to be able to say these are the areas that they need strengthening. Hence, the tool has been developed at 4 levels. At the state level, where I'm talking about officials from departments of CMAT, SAMSA, Samagra Shiksha can fill it out, like the state level departments. Then officials at the district and block level. These would be your CDBOs, your district level coordinators, and other officials. At the school level, for the heads of schools, and another kind of scorecard for the school management committee members of the SMCs or SDMCs. I just want to check in. Am I still audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Clear.
fantastic. Okay, great. Again, this also is a standardized tool that can be customized according to the state's requirement and context. And we will also talk about a little later as to how this tool can be used in its entirety or for different departments. So the state is welcome to customize it the way they see fit. This tool has also been developed in the 3 languages of Hindi, Marathi, and Mizo. Again, with the languages, there have been certain changes depending on the state they are being developed for. So like the Hindi tool in Uttarakhand might vary slightly from the Hindi tool in Rajasthan and things like that. In terms of the usability of a tool, the tool is a forward-looking tool that the state can look at assessing its preparedness now, currently, when it's 2 years into NEP 2020 guidelines and what the state governments have sort of embarked on, and then use it to assess where they have moved maybe 3 years later or 5 years later, or at the end of the duration that NEP is recommending, to be able to ensure that all of these schemes are implemented in the state. And this is a tool that can really sort of enable the state governments to assess the preparedness and use their capacity at scale to be able to implement life skills education. So this was essentially about the tool design. Moving into the tool development process. So again, here too, we started with conducting a literature review, but however, the difference here was that the literature review, because in the absence of an existing tool that could have been adapted to create the systems assessment tool, we looked at the literature to identify key areas of inquiry to conduct a formative research study with the relevant key stakeholders in the state education system. Like I said, the development process was extremely participatory, and so therefore the formative research study spoke to key officials at various levels, and my colleague Rapsima will talk about that in a minute. But some of the questions we wanted to sort of really understand at various levels was, do officials think of, what do they think of life skills education? What is their perception about it? Do they think life skills should be assessed? What kind of capacity building initiatives should the government be thinking about for teachers for implementation of life skills education? What kind of skills should be prioritized for the state, etc.? So after conducting the key informant interviews or the formative research study, this helped us analyze the data and really identify the key areas of inquiry for developing the draft assessment tool, which has been developed in terms of a scorecard. And the reason it is a scorecard is because we want the system to be able to assess itself and really see where they are at in different departments at different levels in terms of the preparedness. So the tool was then revised based on the feedback from various government stakeholders and LSC partners. Here, I want to take just a minute to let the group know that both the tools have gone through a very robust iterative participatory process, where we've not only had internal review committee, technical working groups, assessment working groups, and validation workshops with the government stakeholders to ensure that the tools have the necessary insights and inputs required from all government stakeholders. After developing the final tool, it was piloted in the different states to sort of validate the tool and see how well it's working. And based on the findings, it was then finalized in all languages. And moving forward, I will request Rapsima to come in and just talk quickly about the formative research study.
Yes, I will just take about a minute to go through the formative study process because it was very critical to our tool development process, and it was also a very unique approach that we had taken on in absence of any tool or framework for our reference that we could use. So like Aditi said, we had developed key informant guides based on the key areas of inquiry emerged out of literature review. And we spoke to almost 60 officials across the 4 states to understand and inform the key areas of inquiry for the tool, which is what the key implication of this study was on the tool. It also sort of helped us focus the assessment index that we were giving as part of the scorecard on officials' awareness on the operationalization of provision. So these 2 focus areas also emerged out of the study. So we not only found the key areas of inquiry, but we also found the structure to our assessment from the formative study itself. Just very quickly talking about the formation of the thematic sections because of the formative study, we sort of found a lot of expression around the relevance of life skills education in the context of NEP 2020, the provisions, the consequences of LSC that have been covered and emphasized as part of the policy, and how officials understand life skills education generally, which led to the formation of the first thematic section. We also A lot of officials spoke about how there is a lack of interdepartmental coordination and communication, and how there needs to be more shared decision making across divisions for an effective implementation of life skills education, which led to the second section. And there was also a lot of expression from officials about about the need for incorporating and allocating budgets for life skills education on various levels, and investing in human resources, capacity building, and infrastructure, which led to the third section. And similarly, emphasis on teachers' education, emphasis on developing a particular curriculum framework, emphasis on strengthening state collaborations. All of these areas of inquiry led to the other three sections related to teachers' education, capacity building, curriculum, student assessments, and collaborations. This is how the tool, essentially, the scorecard looks like, with these 6 thematic sections and a preparedness index for each of these sections. So each section is has a particular score range, which when we see a sample items ahead, you will get a more deeper idea of. And each section has a specific preparedness index that helps the officials interpret the score that they have received. For instance, you can see each question has a score range of 0 to 2. If here the officials answer yes for both of these options, they will get a total of 2 score for this question, and they can total their score of each section and interpret their scores based on the preparedness index given. Few examples. And yes, I would now like to invite Aditi to just close our presentation with respect to how we can use the scorecard in different contexts and how institutions use it. Yes.
Thank you so much, Rapsimar. In terms of using the scorecard, the state can choose to either use it as a whole, which means deploy it at every level, at the state level, at the district block level, at the school level, with the teachers and with the heads of schools and the SNC and SDMC members, and therefore cumulatively assess the preparedness of the entire state, or do it department-wise and maybe decide, okay, we just want the SCRT to sort of use this tool to assess how the SCRT is doing on different parameters or thematic area. Similarly, or use it for different thematic areas. If you want to just look at in terms of interdepartmental coordination and decision making, where are the different levels how are the different levels faring on this thematic area? That is another way of being able to use the scorecard. And that's pretty much it from our side. Sorry, we've gone over time, and apologies again for the technical glitches that have just somehow been troubling us today. Over to you, Arjun.
Thanks, Aditi. It's all loud and clear now, and we can see you also very clearly. But thank you so much for presenting this, and thank you, Rapsimar. And thank you everyone who's joined us. I think the system tool has been another pretty exciting tool that we've developed. We've actually been able to pilot it in the 4 states that we worked in. And there are a couple of questions that I think I can quickly respond to before I invite Nina to respond to 2 questions. And honestly, I apologize for my technology skills because I seem to have messed up some of the answers, and now I'm not able to type out the answers. So for those of you who are asking for the slides and the recording will be posted on the LSC's YouTube channel. I have posted a link on the Q&A. You'll find it under the answer tab, but I'll also request one of my colleagues to put it on chat so it's more easily available to everyone who has joined this. You will also find the recordings of our past LifeSkillsNet on that channel, so you can also explore the other meetings that we've had so far. The other question that was asked is the tool available for all? The LSC assessment tool is available for all, and we'll be sharing it through our website as well as early as next week. And we can send out an email to everyone who joined today with the link so that you can explore it. I'll invite Nina to respond for the tool that she's working on, in addition to the 2 other questions that were asked for the March tool. But one last question is on the buy-in from stakeholders. And maybe Aditi, do you want to take that up and tell people the buy-in that we had for the teacher and system tool across the 4 different states, including the statewide rollout that we're now doing, and then hand it over to Nina to wrap up our session today.
Thank you so much, Arjun. Exactly. Very good question in terms of where is the buy-in or what is the buy-in. I think the collaborative has been very clear on one thing from the very beginning, that again, if we are talking about envisioning a world where life skills education is really embedded within the education system, we must work very closely with the government, because they are the ones who can really provide scale. And therefore, the collaborative has been working with the state governments, engaging with them from the very beginning. So the entire process of developing the tools has been extremely participatory and collaborative for all the 4 tools, the adolescent tools as well as the teachers and systems assessment tools. In terms of the like we mentioned in the systems assessment tool, the buy-in was also created by ensuring that the insights are for tool development are coming from the stakeholders. They're coming from the officials who will be using this tool eventually to be able to assess their department or their state's preparedness. So they were involved in the key informant study. Similarly with teachers as well, like when we piloted the tool, we conducted focus group discussions to ensure that we are able to hear their own voices and to see how they're finding the tool useful or not useful. What are the areas that we really need to work on to further refine. And at every stage, we have been going back to the government, working with them to take their inputs, whether it is in terms of language, it is in the terms of content, in terms of the kind of questions we are asking, and sharing back the findings from the 5 district pilot that we conducted in each and every state, to sort of really take them through what kind of insights can the tool generate in both contexts for the teachers and the systems. And at the moment, we're very happy to say that the states are looking at implementing the teachers assessment tool at scale, and we are in conversation for that at the moment. Thanks, Arjun, and over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Aditi. A great learning experience for me as well, and everyone here from Udyam. So thank you for sharing. Thank you to James. And there's one more person who had asked a question about control groups and the Marshall. So that is something we haven't tried yet, and we would love to as well. All of the examples I cited in terms of where we've piloted the tool has been all within the Udyam ecosystem at the moment. So that is something we'd like to do, to go beyond, the schools where Udyam's program is running, and to see, what comes from that control group kind of deployment of the tool. So that is definitely something we would like to do. James had a question around, I think it was leadership and contextualization. And actually, some of the points that Aditi made around language was really interesting as well, where, Hindi in Delhi, for example, versus Hindi in Uttarakhand or some other Hindi-speaking place, you can find differences even culturally and contextually, not necessarily to do with age, but I think even just culture. And I remember in the very beginning when we tried to, the word leadership is really difficult, I find, in other languages, or at least, maybe for someone who isn't as well versed in some other languages, to find exactly what it is you're trying to say. But we found with Hindi, for example, leadership would translate to neta banna, like politician. Which is, of course, not what we're going for a 9th standard kid or an 11th standard kid or youth. But we then found other ways to describe, what leadership can look like and what being a leader can look like, and especially in their context. So I think it actually is more than just age. The same went for a few other words, and this is why we're also trying to gather examples of actions to understand, how are they interpreting it. And I just want to add one more point on, Rab Zimmer mentioned monitoring the data for inconsistencies, and something very interesting in Delhi we saw was, for girls' schools, you would sometimes see boys responding, and for boys' schools, girls responding. So that was an interesting way to also know that there's something going on with, is this reaching non-sample schools, or just as a point to note when you're looking at your data and looking for accuracy. Arjun,
Absolutely.
is there any more? Yeah. I'm seeing one more question, but Arjun, I see we're also at time. Okay, I think it's about collaboration. I'll just quick plug that we are very open to collaboration. We're happy to share also what we've been working on, and we also love guidance and anyone that's willing to sit with us and debate some of these things. So just that final plug. Thank you very much.
Arjun, do you want to come in? I think Arjun is just going to take a second. There might be a technical glitch at his end. Nina, there's another question. You want to take that? Meanwhile, is there a plan to include children below 11 years?
That's sorry, I'm just looking at who it came from. Yes, Paritosh. Thanks for the question. Actually, Udyam currently works with 9th to 12th and ITI students as well. So unlikely that we will, focus on the younger age group anytime soon. But actually, LSC has some great insights from their voices work on the younger age groups and the kinds of conversations actually that you can have around life skills. So I think that is important to take into consideration. Sorry, Arjun, I think you were back. Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm not sure if Arjun is audible, but thank you everyone for coming in and thank you for joining the session. Just to give you the links to where you can reach us out to, we have our social media platforms. You can also reach out to us on our email IDs here. We have talked to us at LifeSkillsCollaborative.in. We've already shared a link to the glossary, and you can also visit the website from there. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Nina, Aditi, and Rapsimar for this really interesting presentation on the tools that you've created. So thank you all so much for this.
Thank you, Purvi. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you for having us. Thanks, everybody. We hope it was insightful and useful for you to attend. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, LSC.
All right, let's do this. Once again, for those of you who've just joined, my name is Arjun Bahadur. I lead the Life Skills Collaborative, which is a collaborative that is championing for life skills in India. Currently, we have 18 organizations that are working across 4 different states and are working on multiple different aspects around life skills, one of which happens to be assessments, and we'll focus the discussion today around assessments. You can see our members on the screen. The basic idea with which the Life Skills Collaborative was set up in January 2020.